कृष्ण प्रसाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पश्चात् देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिविचार्य अष्टोत्तर डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत श्री गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नामाचार्य हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोधाम की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, मथुरा धाम की जय, मायापुर नवधाम की जय, गंगा मई जमुना मई की जय, तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय, समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। All glories to assembly Buddhists. All glories to the assembly Buddhists. All glories to the assembly. All will Shurvan Gaurang.
Jai, Jai, Jai. Thank you so much, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare.
And welcome everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Monday, September 16th, 2024 in New York. And tonight we're starting with Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 4th chapter, text number 17. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ekendra Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Sati Quits Her Body, Chapter 4, entitled Sati Quits Her Body, text number 17. Karno pidhaya nirayadya kalpa ishe dharma vitya asubhira nubhira ashamyane chinnaspa sangya rushati samatim pramukshe jihas sunapi tato vishrutetsa dharmaha. Sati continued, if one hears an irresponsible person blaspheme the master and controller of the religion, one should block his ears and go away if unable to punish him. But if one is able to kill, then one should be forced to cut out the blasphemer's tongue and kill the offender. And after that, one should give up his own life. But what? The argument offered by Sati is that a person who vilifies a great personality is the lowest of all creatures. But by the same argument, Daksha could also defend himself by saying that since he was a Prajapati, the master of many living creatures and one of the great officers of the great universal affairs, his position was so exalted that Sati should accept his good qualities instead of vilifying him. The answer to that argument is that Sati was not vilifying but defending. If possible, she should have cut out Daksha's tongue because he blasphemed Lord Shiva. In other words, since Lord Shiva is a protector of religion, a person who vilifies him should be killed at once. And after killing such a person, one should give up one's life. That is a process. But because Daksha happened to be the father of Sati, she decided not to kill him, but to give up her own life in order to compensate for the great sin she had committed by hearing blasphemy of Lord Shiva. The instruction set forth here in Srimad Bhagavatam is that one should not tolerate at any cost the activities of a person who vilifies or blasphemes an authority. If one is a Brahmana, he should not give up his body because by doing so he would be responsible for killing a Brahmana. Therefore, a Brahmana should leave the place or block his ears so that he will not hear the blasphemy. If one happens to be Kshatriya, he has the power to punish any man. Therefore, a Kshatriya should at once cut out the tongue of the vilifier and kill him. But as far as Vaishya and Sudra are concerned, they should immediately give up their bodies. Sati decided to give up her body because she thought herself to be among the Sudra and Vaishya. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Striyo, Vaishya, Tatha, Sudra, women, laborers, and the mercantile class are on the same level. Thus, since it is recommended that Vaishyas and Sudras should immediately give up their worries upon hearing blasphemy of an exalted person like Lord Shiva. She decided to give up her life. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitam Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishitam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Titam Sajam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhantitamsha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So text number 17 is a very famous one. A person should not hear the blasphemy of a great personality. And if he happened to be there, he should leave at once at the place. This is the time in Kali Yuga we don't follow all the other method here. If you're expert, then you can defeat the person, but other than that, you can just leave the place and forget about the whole episode without getting into any trouble with authority. So here, Sati, daughter of Akshay Maharaj, decided to give her body, and she decided to give her body. Okay, thank you very much. Maharaj, please.
I don't have anything really I need to add here.
Thank you, Maharaj. Okay, Radhesh Prabhu, next please.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Text 18.
Yeah, 18 and if you want 19 also, please.
Atastavoutpannamidam kalevaram nadharayashe shiti kantagarhina jagdhasya mohadhi vishuddhi mandhaso jugupsitasyo dharanam prachakshate. Therefore, I shall no longer bear this unworthy body, which has been received from you, who have blasphemed Lord Shiva. If someone has taken food which is poisonous, the best treatment is to vomit. Since Sati was the representation of the external potency of the Lord, it was in her power to vanquish many universes, including many dakshas. But in order to save her husband from the charge that he employed his wife, Sati, to kill Daksha, because he could not do so due to his inferior position, she decided to give up her body. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Namani. Where our resident sannyasi, His Holiness Bhakti Abhay Ashram Maharaj, he quotes a verse very frequently that describes Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha as Jugupsitam in the first canto. And I'm looking at this, something that's Jugupsitasya udharam prachakshate. It's suitable that one should vomit that out. So never mind, the inferior religious processes that are advocated in various places in the Shastra. Never mind that. This is particularly abominable to blaspheme someone who is so auspicious. Lord Shiva is so auspicious. One of my favorite sections of Srimad Bhagavatam describes that Lord Shiva is made more auspicious by the water of Ganges flowing over his head because of the contact of Ganges water with the lotus feet of the Lord. And those lotus feet act like thunderbolts upon the mountains of accumulated dirt in the hearts and minds of the devotee. So while Lord Shiva is meditating on the Lord and removing all of this dirt, to blaspheme the devotees smothers one. And so Sati wants to become free from this poison, from her contact with this poison. And so the analogy is given that to vomit, to dispel this contact with her father, she's prepared to give up her body. And the purport I found quite interesting, that to protect Shiva's name, that it's not that he's incapable of dealing with it. He had to send me. It wasn't that. It's so she instead decided to give up her own body. Maybe I'll leave it at that if there's a further comment, Guru Maharaj.
Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakrunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadhati Shapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtachadesha Tarani. I suppose it shouldn't go unemphasized how toxic and serious Vaishnava aparadha is taken to be. In our internet culture, we just let our fingers do the walking and create all kinds of nasty criticism of Vaishnavas. But how seriously this is taken to be, that one shouldn't even hear it, one should go away, or one should cut out the tongue of the blasphemer, maybe cut off his fingers in the present context. So toxic. And here that toxicity word is verified. Food that's toxic should be vomited up. Or in this case, one's whole body becomes toxic just by being associated with someone who criticizes Vaishnavas. So serious. So serious. That's something we should not, certainly shouldn't miss, but we should take notice of again and again, that Vaishnava aparadha should be avoided at all costs. I think that was stated in the purport. At all costs, one should avoid it. One shouldn't even hear it. To say nothing of speaking it. Hare Krishna.
Radesh Prabhu, next please.
Navedavadan anuvartate mati sva eva loke ramato mahamune yatagatir deva manushyayo pratak sva eva dharme na param kshipet sthitah. It is better to execute one's occupational duty than to criticize others. Elevated transcendentalists may sometimes forego the rules and regulations of the Vedas, since they do not need to follow them, just as the demigods travel in space, whereas ordinary men travel on the surface of the earth. The behavior of the most elevated transcendentalist and that of the most fallen conditioned soul appears to be the same. The elevated transcendentalist can surpass all the regulations of the Vedas, just as the demigods traveling in space surpass all the jungles and rocks on the surface of the globe, although a common man who has no such ability to travel in space has to face all those impediments. Although the most dear Lord Shiva appears not to observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, he is not affected by such disobedience. But a common man who wants to imitate Lord Shiva is mistaken. A common man must observe all the rules and regulations of the Vedas, which a person who is in the transcendental position does not need to observe. Daksha found fault with Lord Shiva for not observing all the strict rules and regulations of the Vedas, but Sati asserted that he had no need to observe such rules. It is said that for one who is powerful like the sun or the fire, there is no consideration of purity or impurity. The sunshine can sterilize an impure place, whereas if someone else were to pass such a place, he would be affected. One should not try to imitate Lord Shiva, rather one should strictly follow one's prescribed occupational duties. One should never vilify a great personality like Lord Shiva. A couple of analogies come to mind. I was thinking about there's a certain way of lifting weights for people who are into bodybuilding. There's a correct form. Now, someone who's very, very powerful, they could lift a small weight with improper form and not hurt themselves. But if I were to do that, I might mess up my shoulder. I could make some mistake. So there's something that comes with a more powerful position. Or Maharaj, you've quoted, "What's okay for Job is not okay for Bove," and you cited basically rank has its privileges, but not to be exploited for one's own sense gratification. But at the discretion of the advanced devotee, there may be a reason, either personal, in the case of such advanced devotees like Gorky Shordas Babaji. He may take prasadam out of a skull or live in a dirty place, but that saves him from the contaminating association of materialists who would otherwise bother him. Or I was thinking in your podcast interview with Namras Prabhu Maharaj a few days ago, you were glorifying, I forget your godbrothers, I think Vishnu Gadaf Prabhu, I believe his name was, how he allowed for certain bhajans, different things to be chanted that may ordinarily be against kirtan etiquette. But he had the superior discretion to understand that this would ultimately benefit the preaching movement. So now if someone, small timer like me, decides, okay, kick out all regulations, let's just chant whatever, it may not be for the advancement of the kirtan movement. It may just be for my own sense gratification. But someone who's very powerful, who's very learned, may utilize certain tactics that otherwise we should avoid. Now it becomes a little bit confusing for me. When you're following in the footsteps of someone, you have to have the discretion to recognize where things are being deviated. And therefore, devotees are warned not to imitate Lord Shiva. You may see the demigod Lord Shiva is smoking ganja or smearing himself with ashes, associating with ghoulish living entities. But if we associate in that way, then we become contaminated. But Sati had this broad vision to understand Lord Shiva's auspicious position. And Daksha was, anyway, we don't need to recap. We all know the story. Maharaj, if you have something more.
Tadiyasam Nadoshaya, in the great persons, there's no fault. You've covered that. Essentially, it's Sveva dharme naparam shipet. Better to stick to your own duty than criticize. Essentially, mind your own knitting. And Prabhupada gave that instruction. I forget exactly the occasion, but I think one GBC man criticized the way another GBC man was doing something in his own zone. And Prabhupada essentially said that, you stick to your business and let him do his business. That was the upshot of it. Don't criticize others for the way they're handling their duties. You do your duty. Or from another point of view, one might say, who appointed you the judge? Who appointed you the policeman? You stick to your work and do it nicely. And that's your contribution. Your contribution is not to add to the world some criticism that was missing. Your job is to do what your prescribed duty may be. So we forget that, and then we think, well, my prescribed duty is to see that everybody else is acting straight. No. My duty is my duty, and their duty is their duty. That doesn't mean that severe wrongs should just be neglected, unreported, unrecognized. Not like that. But to make an occupation of criticizing how others handle their occupation is not recommended here. Better to execute one's own occupational duty than criticize others. And the example is nice here on that other point that rank has its privileges. The demigods in space travel in their own way, and ordinary men travel on the surface of the earth. So that's their prerogative. Lord Shiva doesn't have to follow the rules and regulations. You're criticizing. You've adopted a sort of hyper-correctness that I'm following all the rules in the Vedas, but he's not following. He doesn't have to follow. He's not on your level.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I have a question, if I may. When Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita that I follow my dharma, if I didn't, then I would be imitated, and the world would go to heck. How about these advanced souls? Is there any consideration there that because we see in our practical experience that people do imitate, and it seems to have caused difficulties in certain people's spiritual lives. So I'm curious if it wouldn't be better for advanced souls like Shiva to comport themselves with more Vaishnava decorum.
That's not for you to decide. That's for Lord. That's with it. And someone might make that argument. Hey, Shiva, what are you doing? You should be following the rules and regulations, if only for the benefit of others. If you do this, then people will do that. No, that's Lord Shiva's business, not your business. Lord Shiva doesn't have to follow. He may, just to set an example, he may follow this or that, or he may not. So that's the position of the transcendental persons or the elevated persons. They may decide, all right, in this instance, I'm going to act this way because others will, otherwise others will take it wrongly. Or they may just act according to their own choice without taking that as the overriding consideration. So that's for them. It's not for us to say, oh, it would be better for him to do it this way. It would be better for him to do it that way. No.
Something in the chat box, Ekendra Prabhu?
Yes, indeed. Prabhin Krishna Prabhu says, when Hanuman suggested Mother Sita sit on him and cross Lanka and return back to Lord Ram, she said in similar lines that it is against the chivalry of Ram that he had to sneak in someone to rescue his wife. She would go when he conquers Lanka.
Thank you.
There's also a very nice purport by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur with a couple of very nice Bhagavatam quotations. If we should read it.
Yes, by all means.
Go ahead.
I will give up my body. This is speaking in Satis, obviously. I will give up my body, but those ignorant of scripture will blame it on Shiva, though he is faultless. Daksha previously said, I have given my daughter to a person who does not perform rituals, is impure, is proud, and violates the rules of conduct. She replies to that statement in this verse. The mind of the great sage enjoying in the self does not concentrate on the rules and regulations, Veda Vadan, since he is not qualified for those rules. Kushala charitenai sham iha svarto navidyate viparyayena vanarto nirahankarinam prabho. My dear Lord, when these great persons who are free from false ego act piously in this world, they have no selfish motives to fulfill. And even when they act in apparent contradiction to the laws of piety, they are not subject to sinful reactions. Yat pada pankaja paraga nisheva tripta yoga prabhava vidhuta kila karma bandha svairang charanti munayopinen nahyamanas tasyechayata vapusha puta eva bandha. Material activities never entangle the devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are fully satisfied by serving the dust of his lotus feet. Nor do material activities entangle those intelligent sages who have freed themselves from the bondage of all fruitive reactions by the power of yoga. So how could there be any question of bondage for the Lord himself, who assumes his transcendental forms according to his own sweet will? The paths of the conditioned and liberated person are different, just as the paths of devatas and men are different, as in the example that Maharaj cited in Prabhupada's purport. Therefore, situated in one's own dharma, one should not criticize others' paths. This is the rule. Nice purport, nice quotes.
Panchatattva Prabhu, you have hands up.
Yeah, I'm relieved to find this. First, two things. I'm relieved to find this option called hide self-view, so I don't have to see my own face on the computer screen. As an example of minding your own knitting, I just wanted to give a quick story. When I was first either a new bhakta or a very new so-called brahmachari, I was living in the brahmachari ashram downstairs in the building that we were situated in, and the upstairs was used by guests. And one devotee came. I believe his name was Satchidananda Prabhu. He's a very dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada. You can hear on some of the early videos his very sweet, simple Bengali chanting. Absolutely from Goloka. There's no way to describe it. And Prabhupada was very, very fond of his chanting. So one day, in my false ego, as I always am, I heard these recordings from upstairs, and I came up and I found Satchidananda Prabhu sitting there and listening on a cassette player to what I regarded as mundane music. It may have been some Bollywood thing, or it just didn't seem very transcendental to me. So in my foolishness, in my foolhardiness, I said, what is this, Satchidananda Prabhu? Why are you listening to this? And you have to understand what a gentle, gentle, gentle soul Satchidananda Prabhu was. But immediately he detected that flaw, that thing in my heart, which was very gross. And he chastised me, and I nearly fell down the stairs in response to his blasting me for challenging him about his, research in his music. And later I came up to him and I apologized. And of course, he was very sweet. And he said, no, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Mostly his English was not very, developed, but I knew at that point, that was my first lesson. And when you approach a senior Vaishnava, you have to be humble. You can't presume to know more. You can't. It's also extremely offensive to your own spiritual master too. Anyway, so this thing, I had this lesson early. I don't know if I've ever learned, but it's something to keep in mind regarding great personalities. What to speak of simply minding your own knitting when somebody else is knitting. When you're dealing with elevated souls, you have to be extremely careful. It's very easy to commit offense. All right, Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
I can add something. We should be careful also not to think that because we occupy some particular post, that sort of gives us authority to, what shall we say, disregard the saintly qualities of more advanced devotees. We've seen people get in trouble that way, that somehow thinking that because they're appointed to some particular post, they don't have to think about these things. We have to think about whatever the rule is, or we have to think about whatever the proper procedure is. We have to think about those things. And the position and someone's position as a Vaishnava, we don't really need to think about that. We don't really need to think about that. That's for other contexts, but we don't need to think about it when that person is within our jurisdiction, whether we're temple president or a GBC man or the involved in some committee or board. We don't need to think about that. That will not help us at all. Or if we think, no, I'm being moral because we're following some mundane standard of morality. No, that's not our world. They have their arbitrary standards of morality, which may be very good for them, better than no morality. But we have Shastra to follow. And if we don't follow it, we'll create trouble for ourselves and do injustice to others. That will not be good.
Panchatattva Prabhu, thank you for sharing your experience. We all learned from that. Yes.
That devotee was so wonderful. This is before the influx of the very elaborate Bengali, alaps and all these alankars and all these different. His singing was so sweet, so simple, so pure. A wonderful Vaishnava. He passed away some years ago. Very wonderful devotee.
Anything on chat box, Ekendra Prabhu?
I should add something just
Sure,
before we
please.
go on to the chat box. That on the one side, one shouldn't overlook someone's Vaishnav, someone's standing as a Vaishnav, someone's qualification as a Vaishnav on some sort of institutional grounds. On the other side, it's not that because someone's a Vaishnav, he should be allowed to do anything. And that's also not there. Therefore, to follow religious principles requires discretion. It requires fine judgment. The Yamadutas, the Vishnu Dutas criticized the Yamadutas Yeah, what rules are you enforcing here? Tell us about it. This is your duty? Yeah, you think so? No, you're ignoring this side of it. You're just looking at your list of how many sins this Jamil has committed, and you haven't considered that he's chanting the holy name of that he's chanted the holy name of the Lord. So you don't know what religion is, and how unfortunate it is that the enforcers of law, the representatives of Yamaraj, don't seem to know what religious principles are. How will the people are supposed to be protected by the enforcers of law, and if those enforcers don't know what the law is, then where will the citizens go for shelter? What will happen? So one requires, therefore, discretion. One has to know, first of all, what the laws are. Otherwise, one doesn't know anything. And then one has to have fine discretion to be able to see what applies where, how things should be done. To be put in a position of responsibility places a great burden on us. We have to be so careful not to go the wrong way, either to the right or to the left. And if we get, therefore, one should be in the mode of goodness, or one should be Krishna conscious, so that one's consciousness will be purified, and one will be able to act properly. Therefore, one has to know the principles, one has to be humble also. One has to have respect for superior personalities. All of these things come into play.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anything in chat box? Yes.
Yes. So Saraswati Mata says, Pranams, Param Puji Maharaj, and all Vaishnavas. Lord Shiva is always following the only rule that cannot be compromised. Cannot be compromised upon. Vishnu Aradhanam Param, always worshiping only Lord Vishnu.
Nice.
And Praveen Krishna Prabhu quotes a threshold for following the rules. Tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyeta yavata matkata shavanado va shraddha yavan najayate. As long as one is not satiated by fruit of activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions.
Very true. Yes. Okay, Panchatattva Prabhu, next, please.
And just to add to that, one shouldn't think, well, I have a taste for Shravanam Kirtanam, I don't have to follow the rules and regulations. We think that we're advanced devotees, we don't need to follow. That we have to be careful of also. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I just add to Saraswati's comment that Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param Tasmat Paratram Devi Didiyanam Samarchana. O Devi, the most exalted system of worship is the worship of Lord Vishnu. Greater than that is the worship of Tadiya, or anything belonging to Vishnu. Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse, Sri Vishnu is Satchidananda Vigraha. Similarly, the most confidential servant of Krishna, the spiritual master, and all devotees of Vishnu are Tadiya. The Satchidananda Vigraha Guru Vaishnava, and things used by them must be considered tadiya, without a doubt, worshipable by all living beings. It's from the Madhya Leela, chapter 12, text 38, purport. Oh, more my hand.
Number 20, yes.
Karma pravrittam cha nivrittam apyuritam vivichobhaya lingam ashritam virodita dyau kapadaika kartari vayam tata brahmani karma narchati. In the Vedas, there are directions for two kinds of activities. Activities for those who are attached to material enjoyment, and activities for those who are materially detached. In consideration of these two kinds of activities, there are two kinds of people who have different symptoms. If one wants to see two kinds of activities in one person, that is contradictory. But both kinds of activities may be neglected by a person who is transcendentally situated. Purport. The Vedic activities are so designed that the conditioned soul who has come to enjoy the material world may do so under direction, so that at the end he becomes detached from such material enjoyment and is eligible to enter into the transcendental position. The four different social orders, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas, gradually train a person to come to the platform of transcendental life. The activities and dress of a grihastha, or householder, are different from those of a sannyasi, one in the renounced order of life. It is impossible for one person to adopt both orders. A sannyasi cannot act like a householder, nor can a householder act like a sannyasi. But above these two kinds of persons, one who engages in material activities and one who has renounced material activities, there is the person who is transcendental to both. Lord Shiva is in the transcendental position because, as stated before, he is always absorbed in the thought of Lord Vasudeva within himself. Therefore, neither the activities of the grihastha nor those of the sannyasi in the renounced order can be applicable for him. He is in the Paramahansa stage, the highest perfectional stage of life. The transcendental position of Lord Shiva is also explained in Bhagavad Gita 2:52 and 53. It is stated there that when one fully engages in the transcendental service of the Lord by performing activities without fruitive results, one is elevated to the transcendental position. At that time, he has no obligation to follow the Vedic injunctions or the different rules and regulations of the Vedas. When one is above the directions of the Vedic ritualistic injunctions for attaining different allurements and is fully absorbed in transcendental thought, which means thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service, one is in the position called Buddhi Yoga or Samadhi, ecstasy. For a person who has attained this stage, neither the Vedic activities for realizing material enjoyment nor those for renunciation are applicable. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuromanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. That is continuing to establish the transcendental position of Lord Shiva. He is not bound by any sort of material rules or regulations. His activities are not governed by the instructions of the Vedas because of a position of non-transcendence. He's in the transcendental position. Those regulations are for those who are not in entirely transcendental position. A work in progress. So an actual transcendentalist does not have to abide in this way and should not be seen in that way. That's the problem. We see them in that way. We think just like us. Daksha was thinking, not only was he thinking, Lord Shiva is just like me, he's thinking, Lord Shiva is inferior to me in every way. This was the depth of his illusion. I think I'll stop. Hare Krishna. Guru Maharaj.
First, I'm struck by the clarity of Prabhupada's purport here. He just makes things so clear by saying you can't be a sannyasi and a householder at the same time. If you're a householder, you're one thing. If you're a sannyasi, you're another thing. We don't expect to see a person following the duties of both orders. It's just so clear. Those Bhagavad Gita verses, Irate moha kalilam buddhir vyatitarishati tadagantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha shrutivit pratipannate idastasyati nischala samadhava chala buddhis tada yogam avapshasi. So the stita pragya, the person who's well situated on the transcendental platform, becomes indifferent to the rules and regulations of the Vedas, as Praveen's quoted earlier. Those apply until you've come to the point of being absorbed in hearing and chanting, or until you're on the transcendental platform. While we're still on the material platform, we have to think, what is my duty as a Brahmin? What is my duty as a Kshatriya? Well, we have all these things to think about. But a person on the transcendental platform goes beyond the statements of the Shrutis, beyond the various rules and regulations, because he's following a higher principle. Just like sometimes we see that someone gives up the material world and someone's preaching to him, but what about your duties? What about this? What about that? What about your wife? What about your job? What about your kids? What about this? What about that? And that may all be valid in the material context, but Shrotavyasya Shrutasya, he's gone beyond that point. He's no longer materially attached or materially detached. Now he wants to be fully engaged in the service of Krishna. He's allowed to leave behind all other duties. And that's Sarva-dharman pratyajya. Mamekam sharanam vraja. Not that we can just carelessly give up our duties because we find them inconvenient and we think we'll get better sense gratification by doing something else. But if one is genuinely acting exclusively for the service of Krishna, one can give up every other duty. The Brajbasis do that. They give up all other duties just to please Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. So we have only 7 minutes left. Yes, somebody in...
Radhesha Prabhu says, today's purport reminds me of a Srila Prabhupada quote that went something along the lines of, our Gurukulis will not be fit for employment. And then, from childhood, learn exclusive worship of Krishna.
Krishna Kante Prabhu, are you ready?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bol Jai Om Sripa Ramamsa Vairaj Jagachari Astotar Sat Shri Srimad is divine grace Guru Maharaj A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kokti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Das Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. All glories to the seven devotees, all glories to the seven devotees, all glories to the seven devotees. Jai Sri Guru Jai Maharaj Das Ki Jai.
Ekendra Prabhu.
Jai. Thank you so much, Krishna Kaunteya Prabhu, and thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Mahesh Pandit, for hosting, and thank you especially Maharaj for giving us your association. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj Ki Jai.
Aveta Bhakta Brinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Very good, very good, very good.
Thank you, Gurudev.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Very good. Very good. Very good.